Every home has its own rules. But what if your in-laws are breaking all the boundaries? Imagine what it would be like to be the one taking responsibility for your family. No, look at this! They're here again without warning. Svetlana sank down on a kitchen chair in despair, watching through the window as the next batch of her husband's relatives unloaded from the cab. The house was in perfect order, just the way Svetlana liked it. On the coffee table waited for its hour a volume of Remark bought a month ago. A cup of steaming coffee and a plate of ginger cookies, her little weakness, were nestled next to it. Finally, Svetlana thought as she settled into her favourite chair. She'd waited so long for this moment, just to sit in silence, to read, to think about her own. The last few weeks at work had been crazy. The annual report in the accounting department had taken all her energy. But today it was over, and she could relax. The sound of a cab pulling up made her flinch. She glanced out the window and froze, unable to believe her eyes. Maxime only shrugged, peering out from behind her shoulder. So what? They're relatives. Where else can they go? Where to go? To a hotel, or at least call in advance? Svetlana clenched her fists so that her knuckles turned white. What are we, a 24-hour boarding house for your relatives? The bell at the door interrupted their squabble. On the threshold stood Victor, Maxime's younger brother, his wife Alla and 2 teenage children. Their suitcases were piled behind their backs, not for a couple of days, but for at least a week. "Hello, relatives," Victor smiled broadly, pushing unceremoniously into the hallway. "We're here to visit you. We decided to make a surprise." "Surprise?" Svetlana mentally mocked him, pulling on a duty smile. The third surprise in the last 6 months, and every time the same thing. They come without a call, settle down as if they were at home, and she had to serve them. "Come in, make yourself comfortable," she gritted her teeth, realizing that she had no choice anyway. And then the most interesting thing happened. Alla, without even taking off her shoes, walked into the living room, leaving dirty footprints on the freshly cleaned floor. "Svetika, do you have any tea? We are so hungry from the road," she chirped, flopping down on the sofa. The evening turned into the usual balaganza. Victor and Maxime sat down to a bottle of talk about life. Alla collapsed in front of the TV, occasionally shouting, "Sveta, do you have any cookies?" The children ran around the apartment like in a gymnasium, occasionally dropping and breaking something. By nightfall, Svetlana was falling off her feet. She washed a mountain of dishes, made beds for the guests, fed the whole crowd dinner. And this is after a full day's work in the accounting department. And back to work tomorrow. "Maxime, we need to talk," she said quietly to her husband when they were finally alone in the bedroom. He replied sleepily, almost dozing off. "This can't go on like this. I'm not iron. I've got a job, a house to run, cooking, cleaning. And now your relatives, who act like... Like what?" Maxime raised himself on an elbow, a note of irritation in his voice. "They're my family, by the way. And yours too." "Family?" Svetlana barely restrained herself from shouting. "Family doesn't behave like that. At least family gives you a heads up. They help around the house. Respects other people's labor, after all. Here we go!" Maxime defiantly turned his back to the wall. "Let's discuss it tomorrow." But that wasn't all. Tomorrow began like a bad dream. At 7 in the morning, Svetlana found that the bathroom was occupied. Alla had decided to take an hour's beauty treatment, just when her mistress had to get ready for work. The kitchen was a wreck after her nephew's nighttime raid on the refrigerator. But Victor, as if nothing had happened, was already sitting at the table and demanding breakfast. "Svetul, I'd like some eggs with sausage, eh? My head after yesterday." That was the last straw. "You know what?" Svetlana slowly turned to her brother-in-law. "You'll fry your own eggs and cut the sausage yourself." She went out into the corridor, where a sleepy Maxim was already looming, and blurted out what had been accumulating inside for a long... "You feed your insolent relatives yourself! I'm not going to sign up for this!" With these words, she grabbed her bag and jumped out of the apartment, slamming the door loudly. Her heart was pounding, her hands were shaking, but there was a strange lightness inside, as if a huge stone had finally fallen from her soul. On her way to work, she dialed her friend's number. "Len, can I stay with you for a few days?" "No, that's okay. I just need a break from this madhouse." In the evening, instead of returning home, Svetlana went to Lena's house. The phone was ringing off the hook with Maxim's calls, but she didn't pick up. Let him feel how it feels when the whole household is on you. On the third day, Svetlana received a long message from her husband. "Forgive me. I understood everything. Victor and his family went to a hotel. Can you come home? We need to talk." She returned that evening. The apartment greeted her with an unusual silence and traces of her relative's vigorous activity. Maxim sat in the kitchen, clumsily trying to put things in order. Svetlana silently began to sort through the piles of dirty dishes. "I've set the rules," Maxim continued. "No unscheduled visits, no consumerism. If they want to stay here, they are welcome to, but in a human way, with respect for the hosts." "And they agreed?" Svetlana skeptically snorted. "Not right away." Victor took offense. Alla threw a tantrum. Svetlana felt the tension of the last few days slowly let go. She looked at her husband, disheveled, tired, but somehow matured these days. "You know," she said, turning on the kettle, "I don't mind having guests. I really don't. I don't mind being a free servant. I know." Maxim came over and hugged her from behind. "It won't happen again, I promise." They drank tea in the kitchen, gradually returning to the usual rhythm of life. A week later, Victor called. "Listen, Alla and I have been thinking. Can we come to you for the weekend? We'll buy groceries, we'll take turns cooking, and in general, we'll help you with whatever you need." Svetlana looked at her husband and smiled. "Come, since then, the visits of relatives have really changed. They learn to warn in advance, to help with household chores, to respect the personal space of the owners." And Svetlana realized the main thing: sometimes you just need to stop tolerating and clearly define your boundaries. And then, even the most unapologetic relatives can turn into a normal family. It just takes time for everyone to realize it and the courage to change the way things are. After all, a family is not when you have to endure disrespect for the sake of peace, but when everyone learns to respect each other for the sake of real intimacy. Now, when guests rang the doorbell, Svetlana no longer felt that agonizing anxiety, because she knew that there would be no more room for consumerism in her home.